February reading wrap up and book bucket list. In February, I read 3 books, and this is basically going to be if I recommend them or not and what I pulled from them that I want to put on my book bucket list. If you're not sure what that is, I will link the original video that I did in January for the start of creating a book bucket list. But this past month in February, I read 3 books. The first was House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas, and I don't remember what I rated it. I think it was one of my lesser favorites of her books. And honestly, there was just a lot of kind of weird things going on in that book. Nothing in particular drew me in as far as like something I'd want to add as something I could potentially do in my real life. So out of that one, I only found one, which I've kind of always had this dream, but I definitely put it on like my book bucket list on Notion. And that was that I would love to actually have a library of my own, and one that I can share with other people too. Like, I would love for people to be able to also enjoy that space. So I think that would be really cool. Not like one that's like an actual literal public library, just I think to be considered having like a library, you have to have 500 books. I counted mine. I think I have like 477 to go. I have 477 physical books to go if I want to actually create that. But I do think having my own like beautiful library space that I could share with like friends and family and things like that would be pretty amazing. Out of all of her books, and specifically in that series, libraries do seem important, and they are an interesting aspect of those novels to me. So I definitely thought that was like a really fun, interesting one. No idea when that will happen for me. However, I think it's pretty fun to plan, or at least think about what my own personal library could one day look like. And then the second book I read in February was called In the Weeds by B.K. Borison. I think what's really popular with this author is her like Christmas book. It's called, what is it called? I literally read it and I can't think of what it's called. Probably because it wasn't like my absolute favorite. I did like In the Weeds more than I liked this other one. What is it called? I read it and I blank. My brain is just blank right now. She has a book that is around Christmas time. There's like a Christmas tree farm. It's cute, but it wasn't my favorite. I liked this In the Weeds more. It focuses on like side characters from that first book, but technically I think these are all standalones. It's just one of those series where it's a romance series. You could read it as a series if you want to, and you'll see interconnectedness throughout. I will say what I love about romance novels, romantic comedy novels, is they are just very good at making things like cheesy, but in a super romanticized way that I love and wish we could kind of take and put in our lives more often. I think I rated this one also a 4 out of 5, but what I really, really loved about this one, there were 3 things that I ended up pulling out of it that are like definitely doable. It's just like, why do I never think about doing these things? These would be so fun. So the first one was I want to go on an unplanned trip. Anyone who knows me knows that it's probably a little bit wild for me to say that because I am very much a planner. The only time I'm not planning is when I'm with like my best friends and we're like going about our day, doing whatever we feel is the next right thing. And I want to do a trip like that. So it would probably have to be a trip with my friends if I'm being honest, but I want it to be completely unplanned, outside of like, yeah, I know I'm leaving kind of thing, and I have someone to help take care of cats. Side note, there's 4 of them, so can't leave them unplanned. But that's a huge premise of In the Weeds, is she kind of goes on a completely unplanned trip back to the Christmas tree farm that she was at the first book. This is going to bug me and I need to know what the book name is, because Love Light Farms. It's called Love Light Farms, okay. So basically she goes back to Love Light Farms and it's a completely unplanned trip. Obviously that has its own like pros and cons, but it was really cute. I like the idea of doing something like that, especially because I am someone who could use a little letting go and not so much planning in my life. I think that would be nice. I'm very used to being that type A, plan everything to a T, and I'm just looking to let go of that a little bit. I am doing a lot better with that since I've moved to Portugal, but I think this would be a really fun way to really embrace that. And then the next one on the list was that the female main character, basically it goes into a field of wildflowers and lays in them. And I know that's like simple, but I've never done that. And that honestly sounds so magical. I was like, that's going on the list. I will be doing that. I've seen wildflowers here already, but yeah, I think that would just be super magical and fun to do. Like I said, simple. I swear romance novels just know how to do these things the best. They take like little things that we kind of forget and maybe take for granted sometimes and make them like extra special. And then the last one was one that I thought was just kind of funny. So my favorite like home-baked cookie would be oatmeal chocolate chip. And in this book, she ends up eating oatmeal chocolate chip cookies until she has to undo her jeans. So I wrote that one down because I was like, I miss these cookies so much. I've never eaten them to that extent, and they are my favorite. So that'd be pretty fun. Maybe the very next time I'm around oatmeal chocolate chip cookies, that's what I'll do. It's funny though, because I typically wear a lot of dresses, so we'll see how the timing of that works. Anyway, I wrote that one as the last one, but yeah, they're rather simplistic things. These are just things I've never done and I think would be really fun to do. And this book was just adorable. I really, really liked it. It was super cute, just what you need in terms of like a romance. I will say like something I don't like and this book does have is a miscommunication trope. I will probably review all these books separately, but that's something to keep in mind if you're looking into reading this book. However, I did like it a lot more than Love Light Farms. So if you enjoyed that, I think maybe you would like this even more. However, I have noticed when I look at reviews, people who really liked Love Light Farms don't really like In the Weeds. So maybe if you didn't like Love Light Farms, you would really like this book. And then the last book I read in February was A Tempest of Tea. This was another release day book reading event for me. I really, really enjoyed it. This is basically a story. It is a fantasy, a YA fantasy, and it centers around 5 characters. The main character, Arthi, runs basically like a tea shop during the day and then like a vampire tea blood shop. I don't even know what you would call it at night, but basically it's Spindrift, and I just really, really love this book. This was also a 4 out of 5 stars for me. This was such a fun read and unique too. I love the aspect of incorporating tea into this book. I thoroughly enjoyed especially some of the writing that like was definitely, I don't even know what's the word for that? It's like tea-centric. That's not the word, but it was definitely like tea-centric wording in some of the like ways that the people would talk, and I love that. I also love that this is like vampires. I have read a lot of Fae type fantasies lately, and I really enjoyed that this was a vampire novel. It seems like vampires are maybe coming back. Maybe they were never really out. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed this novel. For this one, for my book bucket list, again, this is something I've always wanted to do, but this book really solidified it, and that's high tea, like afternoon tea, where you have fancy ass tea and like finger sandwiches and the cutest little like desserts. I would love to do this. If I could do it with my friends, even better, but I would absolutely love to have high tea. This is something that I've always wanted to do. I've never done it, and this book really solidified that this is something that I want to do. And honestly, for February, it was a really good reading month. I would say out of all 3 books, House of Flame and Shadow was my least favorite, just because I feel like I had higher expectations for that novel and for that specific reading experience. Whereas I didn't so much for A Tempest of Tea because I've never read anything by Hafsah Faizal. I should have said her name, I'm sorry. If that is who wrote A Tempest of Tea, is Hafsah Faizal. And I really enjoyed that. I'm so much so that this is one where I will read the next book. I know I will. I'm very excited actually to read the next book, and I am needing to add her other books to my TBR that she's written previous to this one. And then In the Weeds, I was pleasantly surprised considering that Love Light Farms wasn't my absolute favorite. I honestly picked it up because when I was reading Love Light Farms, Beckett, the main male character, was someone who I wanted to read his story, especially because in Love Light Farms he kind of adopts some kittens and it's just adorable. So not very many books this month. That's okay. Honestly, I just took my time enjoying reading them. I didn't want to rush anything, and it was a really good reading month. I'm very excited for March. maybe one of these days I will put out a TBR video. I just feel like I don't really stick to them. That's why I did like the original long form TBR, what I plan to read throughout the year. It makes it easy. I can kind of just read what I said I was going to read by season and then fill in the gaps however I please, whenever I please. I'm very excited to get into reading for March. I am currently reading Lore of the Wilds. Really enjoying it so far. However, I'm going to be careful with what I say about that because there have been books that I've started and the first like half is so good, and then the second part you're like, what is happening right now? How did this go from so good to, and I can't put it down, to I cannot pick it back up? But anyway, it hasn't done that yet. It's really good so far, so I'm really enjoying that. And yeah, these are my book bucket list items. I will show you guys how this month looks in Notion, how I wrote it out, the pictures. It's so cute. And this is how the book bucket list looks in my Notion. So, House of Flame and Shadow, the library, in the weeds, in a field of wildflowers, in the weeds, an unplanned trip, in the weeds, oatmeal chocolate chip cookies, and a tempest of tea, high tea, or afternoon tea, whatever you'd prefer to call it. This was January. I read more books, so obviously more bucket list items. But yeah, this is February. Very excited. You can open them up and like add details. I also have it in table format. Once you do it, you can check it off and then give all the details about how it actually went. And that is my February book bucket list. I'm so excited to start sharing the videos where I'm actually doing the things on the book bucket list. Some of them will obviously be easier to do sooner than later, which I'm really excited for. I cannot wait to share those videos. But for now, these are the books I read in February, and these are the book bucket list items. If you have anything in a book that you wish could come true for you, or you want to make a reality in your life, definitely pop it in the comments. I love talking about this. I think fictional books create such amazing like expansion of our imagination. They make us dream more and believe more about what's possible in our day-to-day lives. So I do think if there's something that you saw in a book that you want to make real, talking about it is like a first step. So let's talk about it. And as a final note, I would recommend all of them, but a side note for House of Flame and Shadow, if this is something you're considering reading, I highly recommend reading Sarah J. Maas's other series first. That's just a personal preference, but I do think you'll get more enjoyment out of reading this one honestly last. I know a lot of people say that you can read ACOTAR and then this one. I would read the other ones first and then get to these. They are huge, they are long, and honestly, if you are not sold on her as a writer, I just don't see how you would stay in this book. I don't know, I could be wrong, but I know for me, if I wouldn't have read her other works first, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed it as much. I would highly recommend though In the Weeds and A Tempest of Tea. They were great. I enjoyed reading them so much. And let me know if there's anything you think I should be reading going into spring. I am so excited for spring. It's not even funny. I know it's already warm here, but honestly, just knowing that it's going to be so flowery, so beautiful already here where I am from. Spring is like a second winter, and this is actually going to be a true spring, and I'm just so excited for that. So yeah, I'll talk to you guys next week.